It was the kind of winter that cut straight through your bones, the kind where every breath felt like it carried a blade. In a small, worn-down town in Pennsylvania, the kind of place where smokestacks painted the sky gray and folks kept their heads low, lived a man named Samuel Wright. Sam was a black man in his late 50s, shoulders bent from decades at the steel plant, a limp in his leg that never quite healed after a machine accident years back. He was the kind of man people overlooked quiet, slow, the one everybody thought would never amount to much. His boss, Frank Dalton, made sure to remind him every chance he got. Too slow, Wright Frank would bark across the factory floor, his voice dripping with disdain. Even a broken clock moves faster than you. The younger workers laughed some because they wanted to, others because they were too afraid not to. Sam never answered. He just swallowed the insults, wiped the sweat from his brow, and pushed through the pain in his knee. One bitter evening on his way home from the plant, Sam cut through a narrow alley behind a diner. The wind whistled like it wanted to skin him alive, and that's when he saw them two kids, no older than 10 or 11, huddled by a dumpster. The boy had his arm around a little girl, their clothes nothing but rags, their faces pale with hunger. Sam froze. He could have kept walking like everybody else had. He could have told himself what Frank always told him. "You can barely feed yourself, old man. Don't go dragging strays home." But Sam knew what it felt like to be invisible, to be thrown away. He crouched, joints aching, and whispered, "You two got anywhere to go?" The boy tightened his grip on his sister, shook his head. Sam let out a long breath, his breath turning white in the cold air. "Not tonight," he murmured. He held out his hand. The girl slipped her tiny, ice-cold fingers into his. That was all it took. When he walked them into his cramped apartment, neighbors peeked through cracked doors. "That fool's lost it," one woman muttered. "Man can't pay his own bills and now he's dragging home strays." Another laughed under her breath. "He'll sink right along with them." Sam heard every word. He always did. But he just kept walking, those fragile steps trailing behind him. His place wasn't much peeling wallpaper, a couch that sagged like it had given up on life, a heater that rattled louder than it warmed. But he laid out blankets, heated up a pot of broth, and watched those kids eat like it was the first real meal they'd had in days. That night, rubbing his bad leg in the corner, Sam thought about how tomorrow Frank would tear into him again, how money would stretch even thinner. But he also knew one thing: those kids wouldn't be sleeping on frozen concrete anymore. Not as long as he was breathing. Life didn't get easier. If anything, it got harder. At the plant, Frank made sure of it. "Right." He yelled one morning loud enough for the whole floor to hear. "I bet even those little orphans you dragged home could outwork you." The men laughed. Sam didn't. He just pushed harder, every insult weighing on him like another bag of iron. But at night, when he limped through his door, something changed. The boy Daniel would rush up with a book in hand, eager to read out loud what he learned at school. The girl Sophie scribbled drawings of warm houses and smiling families at the wobbly table. Sam patched their clothes with clumsy stitches, saved pennies for shoes, gave up his meals so they wouldn't go hungry. When the heater sputtered and died, he pulled them close, pretending he wasn't cold himself. People gossiped. A black man raising 2 white kids in that town. It was fuel for every cruel tongue. They'll turn on him first chance they get. One man sneered at the corner store. "He's wasting his life," another said, shaking her head. Sam heard it all but never answered. His answer was the food on the table, the lessons at the kitchen counter, the way he taught Daniel to shake a hand firm, the way he showed Sophie to hold her head high when the world tried to shrink her. Years rolled on. Daniel grew into a sharp young man, quick on his feet, the kind of kid teachers whispered had a future. He earned a scholarship to law school. Sophie found her voice too fearless in debates, chasing journalism with fire in her eyes. Sam's back bent lower every year, his steps slower, but his pride in those kids made him stand taller in his heart. He pinned their letters to his wall like trophies. But Frank, he never let go of his bitterness. Watching Sam build a family, watching those kids succeed, it ate at him. He told anyone who'd listen that Sam was nothing but a fraud, a leech pretending to be something he wasn't. And one autumn morning, Frank struck. Sam came home to find two cops waiting by his door. They stormed inside, tore apart his small apartment, and pulled out a bag stuffed with stolen cash and company equipment. Sam's breath caught. He'd never seen it before. But within hours, he was in cuffs, the metal biting into his skin. Frank stood by the factory gates, arms crossed, smirking. Guess kindness don't pay, after all, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. Some laughed, others looked away. In the courtroom, the air smelled of varnish and dust. Sam sat hunched, his shoulders sagging, as the prosecutor painted him as a bitter old man who'd stolen to survive. Witness after witness, workers Frank had paid off, claimed they saw him sneaking around storage rooms. The gallery buzzed with whispers. "I knew he was too good to be true," one woman said. "Those kids he raised probably don't even know who he really is." Sam stayed silent. He wanted to scream, but years of swallowing insults had trained him to hold it in. He thought of Daniel and Sophie, but he couldn't drag them into this shame. Better they stayed away. Better they never saw him like this. And then the doors creaked open. Heads turned. Two figures stepped in. Daniel and Sophie. No longer the shivering kids from the alley, but grown, unshaken eyes locked on the man who had once saved them. Sam's chest tightened. He hadn't wanted them here. But as Daniel dropped a heavy stack of files on the defense table, and Sophie lifted a recorder, scanning the room with a reporter's gaze, he realized something he'd never dared to believe: his kindness had come full circle. The judge tapped his gavel, irritation clear. "Who are you?" he demanded. Daniel straightened his tie, voice steady. "I'm Daniel Wright, this man's son, and his defense attorney." The room erupted in gasps. Sophie stepped forward, her recorder flashing red. "And I'm Sophie Wright, journalist. I'll be documenting every word of this trial." Frank's smirk faltered for the first time. What followed was nothing short of war. The prosecution tried to steamroll the case, but Daniel carved it apart piece by piece. Witnesses who claimed they saw Sam stealing stumbled under cross-examination. One admitted he'd only heard rumors. Another contradicted himself until the whole gallery snickered. Daniel's voice cut sharp as steel. "So which is it? Did you see my father, or are you just parroting what you were paid to say?" And then came Sophie's bombshell. She requested permission to share her findings. A thick report exposing Frank Dalton's years of wage theft, harassment, falsified accounts. Documents, testimonies, everything. The judge's brows shot up as murmurs rippled through the gallery. Frank's face turned crimson fists, white-knuckled as he sputtered, "Lies, all lies." But the tide had turned. The judge leaned back, tapping his pen, his voice calm but heavy. "It seems this case was built on manipulation. The charges against Samuel Wright are dismissed." The gavel came down. Gasps, applause, shouts filled the courtroom. Frank stormed out, humiliated, while Daniel placed a hand on Sam's shoulder. Sophie whispered, voice trembling, "You don't have to carry this alone anymore, Dad." That single word Dad echoed louder than the gavel that had freed him. The neighbors who once mocked him stood silent now. Reporters scribbled furiously, and Sam, weary and gray, finally allowed his back to straighten. He had once lifted two children out of the cold. 20 years later, they had lifted him out of a cage. Kindness doesn't die. It waits. It grows. And when the time is right, it saves. Sam never imagined that the choice he made on a freezing night decades ago would one day save his life. Now here's the question for you. Was it right for a man like Sam to suffer all those years, mocked, broken, before justice finally found him? Do you believe society has changed enough to see a man's heart before his skin? Or do we still let prejudice write the story? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you think justice looks like in a world that often forgets the people who choose kindness first. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because there are more stories that need to be told.